All right, folks, find your seat so it can begin on time. Excellent. And once again, all right, our first talk, but not the first time. Pinning, identifying, databasing, leveraging volunteers in the Denver Museum of Nature and Science Entomology Collection. Genevieve Anderegg.
This is the last time, I promise. So unless you're going to ESA, then I am presenting in the ECN symposium there. Yeah, no more butterflies in this one, I promise. Okay, so yeah, this is about the volunteers that I manage in the entomology collection at Denver. So again, I'm the assistant collections manager of invertebrates there. So I take care of the arachnology, marine invertebrate, and entomology collections. This is specifically about our entomology volunteers. So the DMNS Volunteer Corps is huge at DMNS. So again, about our museum, we are not affiliated with a university, and we're just a large public institution that focuses on exhibits, traveling exhibits, and lots of education within the local area. We have one of the largest membership corps in the country, and that contributes to our really large volunteer corps. So overall, the museum has over 900 volunteers in both guest-facing and behind-the-scenes positions. If you see someone with black pants, white shirt, and a blue vest walking around doing interpretation, wayfinding, working with carts and touch carts, handling specimens with kids in the museum, that's a really awesome volunteer. Many of the volunteers are museum members at our institution, and we have a really large volunteer infrastructure in the form of our volunteer engagement department that has 7 full-time employees whose job it is to take care of these volunteers, manage them, and there's a lot of management that goes into that. So we use Digital Cheetah, which is like our online vendor for volunteer management system. So that has forms where people can fill out if they're interested in volunteering. That's where we do our shift management system. It has all the biographical information on folks. So yeah, we use Digital Cheetah a lot. It's an app on your phone, and it's online for admin as well. And just some like overall stats in 2024, 905 volunteers in the museum contributed over 100,000 hours, which is valued at $4.2 million. And there's a lot of perks as well if you're a volunteer at the museum. Last week we had free lunches for volunteers. Every year they get a 20% discount around this time, the holiday season, for memberships. And every year we have a volunteer celebration, and this year, and we give awards for like time served as a volunteer. And this year we had our first 50-year anniversary award, I believe. So at the zoology collection, it's 3 staff members: the head collection manager, Andy Dahl, me for invertebrates, and then Cameron Pittman for vertebrates. And for those 3 staff members, we have 75 volunteers. Here we have some of my amazing marine invertebrate volunteers. We had 70s night for members night. So we were all 70s themed, and big open house in the collections. So in the zoology collection, we have 1.3 million specimens with an active in-house research and loan program. We do a lot of education, exhibition, and outreach in our collection. I feel like I spend more time talking about my job than doing my job sometimes. We have a lot of tours in the collection. And we have this really large workshop this picture is, and that supports collaboration and community. And we have shifts 4 days a week for volunteers. So Tuesday through Friday, we have morning, afternoon, and then all day, some combination in there. And not on Monday, because that is meeting day, and we give tours to school kids on Mondays. And then the entomology collection specifically. So we have 1.1 million specimens. Many of those are pinned. Many of those are also in ethanol, 75%. We have strings in Coleoptera and Lepidoptera, with a focus on the American West and Midwest, but significant global holdings as well. The butterflies, for example. And we store our data on ecdysis with about 138,000 records. And we currently have 15 volunteers in entomology, and I'm looking to get more. So the number is always, kind of going up and down as high school students and college students come with me for the summer, and then they go back to school and yada, yada. So I have 4 main tasks that volunteers help me with in the collection, and I am responsible for training and overseeing and keeping up with all of them. So I have 7 people right now who do pinning and sorting. So we have a lot of bulk trap ethanol samples, we all do, but at DMNS we do as well. So they pin specimens from ethanol, sort those bulk samples and identify them to order for me. And I teach them which things should be pinned versus kept in ethanol. I'll take a big jar, create labels and like just tape them all to the lid, hand them to a volunteer, and then they'll identify them, put in identification labels, and then pin the ones that should be pinned. I have about 5 databasers. They enter single specimen records into ecdysis. And these are folks that also do spreadsheet data transcription for me as well. So if I need things in a spreadsheet, like what is in this drawer and how many and what labels do I need to print, I'll just ask them to do that transcription for me. Right now I have 2 organizers, and this is like a super databaser. So these are folks that usually have experience with databasing, but they help me organize the pinned collection. And these folks have high spreadsheet proficiency. So I will give them a spreadsheet that has like a list of everything that's in every drawer in this one part of the collection, the order that it should be in, and then it's their job to make that happen. And so I've got Sydney and Alex doing that right now, and they are amazing. And then we have one photographer, Bob Livingston, who does Photoshop and focus stacking for images of insects. So what's the recruitment workflow? So we have volunteer recruitment postings that we can request that the volunteer services department puts up on the website, or it can be organic connection. Like I give my business cards to someone, or we give a tour in the collection to like a college or high school group and they're interested in volunteering for me. Then I'll hand them a business card and then they can kind of get expedited through the application process. So we make that connection. They'll often fill out a form and there'll be a 30-minute Zoom call that I do with every person that's interested, just for me to like get a vibe on what the person is interested in, because I like to describe what our current needs are in the collection and then see where their interests and work style fit with the things that we need doing. And also, why are they interested in volunteering? Why insects? They don't have to have any previous experience with insects, but if they are just like kind of interested or want to learn more about them. So I'm kind of just looking for overall enthusiasm and like ability to like say that they understand and follow directions, have good hand-eye coordination and good attention to detail. So then basically like we have that 30-minute Zoom call. I don't think I've ever turned anyone down, but then I say, oh my God, I'd love to have you. And here are the times where we think you would come in for. Then it gets kicked back to the volunteer engagement department and they do all this behind the scenes stuff. So everyone has to undergo a background check in the museum because there's lots of, again, front of house education with kids. So everyone has to go through a background check. Then they have to do required trainings online. And that's mostly like videos about like what DMNS does and how we're funded and what are our values. And then they have to do a new volunteer orientation, which shows them like, what is the volunteer services department? Where can they go and get food? Where are the snacks? You know, what you should do in the event of an emergency, yada, yada. And then we can schedule their first day. So sometimes there's that lag in between where I said I'd like to have someone volunteer and then we have to kick it back to volunteer services and then they can come back to volunteer for me. For training, depending on the task, sorry, I forgot to mention, this is Alex. He's amazing. He currently works in like finance, but did a master's in entomology, and he loves Hymenoptera. And we have like 100 drawers maybe of Hymenoptera. And I said, hey, Alex, can you help? And he said, yes. So he's reorganizing the whole thing for me and doing an amazing job. So he's one of my organizers. This year is David. David is a retired civil engineer, and he puts labels on insects for 8 hours a week. So he was doing one shift with me, and then he sent me an email that said another day, another $1, and I would like to do another day. So every week he puts like labels on 2 drawers of insects, which is amazing, depending on the size of the insect. So back to training. So it's about 1 to 3 hours of active training, depending on the task that I do with each volunteer. First, I go over lab safety and workshop guidelines with them. We don't allow food in our area. You can have drinks, but in closed containers. Here's all the emergency exits and stuff like that, because we're like 75 feet below ground. And then every task that I have like a printed manual or workflow that they work through, along with an overall collections manual that I don't make everyone read in whole, but every time they ask me a question, I'll like go over to the manual and open it up and like point to the page and be like, oh my gosh, so right here, it says in more detail. So that way everyone knows kind of exactly what's going on in many aspects of the collection. And oftentimes, especially for databasing, I'll be like, okay, I wrote this instruction, this whole manual on this. You're going to read this and I'm going to sit here and then you're going to ask me questions, but I need you to read this. And then they can like fill out and annotate their own copy. I always encourage questions. I'm like constantly running from task to task down in the workshop. And then someone's like, hey, Jenna. And I'm like, yes. And they're like, is this a blank? And I'm like, I think so. So always encouraging people to ask me questions, no matter how silly they might think it is. And I love to give people the overall picture of what we do in the collection and why, like where are they in the workflow? So I'll often pull up GBIF and explain Darwin Core, especially for our databasers. Like this is why we collect the data verbatim, and then this is why we interpret it a specific way and put it in this format. So it all meshes together. And then pull up GBIF and say, here, look, this record that you're entering goes into, you know, what is it over now, 2 billion records or 3 on GBIF, where people can search all of this occurrence data, and you are directly contributing to that. Making sure that they pin things well and keep track of all the label data, because guess what? David has to put the label on it, and then someone's going to identify that and enter that into the database later. So try and give people a sense of exactly where they are in the whole operation of everything. For making sure that folks stay interested and staying in the collection, I like to gently correct mistakes and then explain like reasons for specific practices. Like, okay, so here I can see that you pinned the staphylinid, you know, through the pronotum instead. I can understand how you could totally make that mistake. I've done it too. Here's how we're going to do this differently because its body's going to fall off and because you've pinned it through the neck. So kind of like gently encouraging that way. But I like to do a balance of quality and quantity. We all break insects, we all try our best, but things happened, a leg flies off. You know, what we're gonna do is put that in a gel cap or glue it back to the bug. So some people will freak out and be too careful with the specimens, and then some people will be like maybe a little bit too casual. We're gonna go for like, you know, right down the middle. We wanna get a lot of things done, but we wanna try and do a good job as well. I do allow for moving in between tasks within reason. So like some volunteers, you know, might be really into pinning and they do that for a while. And then I had one volunteer that was like, I was just diagnosed with an autoimmune disease and like my hands are starting to hurt. So then they are now databasing and doing amazing at that, even though they wanted to do bugs to start out with. Or folks are like, you know what, reading the tiny labels isn't great for my eyesight, but I love to vibe out, listen to music in a podcast and pin bugs. So within reason, I'm like, yes, let me train you in whatever. So I like to know what my volunteers are interested in and then what tasks I have that need doing. So I'll think of tasks for specific volunteers. Like, oh, you mentioned that you really like the look of these and you like this task. Well, guess what? You can make the spreadsheet for me. We have lots of community within our workshop and people become friends. I've oftentimes had conversations with volunteers. I'm like, okay, wait, you're interested in pottery and you're interested in pottery. Now you're best friends, talk. Yeah, and that keeps them interested in coming back to the collection. I like to give advice or listen. I've written lots of letters of recommendation for students going into college and beyond who want to get experience and then find the science fix that they're looking for in the collection. And then sometimes it's retired folks that need to tell me about their grandkids and what bugs they found in their backyard. And I am so there to hear all about it because then they'll keep coming to the collection and pinning bugs for me. And we love bugs. So, or, you know, insects, but bugs. So always looking at creepy crawlies and showing love for them. And I want to show an example of task difficulty. So like for databasing, we have the training wheel moths. So I often start folks out on interest or like more easy tasks. So these are often the same place and time, but they're fragile specimens. So they learn handling of the insect while they're databasing it. And then we can move on to more complex data for these specimens, which include different collecting events, and they learn georeferencing, but they're like already partitioned out into different unit trays, and I've already printed the labels for them. And then we have the everything drawer. And this is where it's got just kind of a mess, needs total curation, and then they'll transcribe the labels, help me start looking up taxonomic names, and we'll talk back and forth on spreadsheets. So that's, yeah, I like to level folks up. And just kind of some stats. So we had about 6,200 records entered this past year. I would like to do more, but we were focusing on many other things. And that's only with 5 databasers that do about 3 hours a week. Looking to get more right now if you know anyone in the different area. We organized about 900 drawers this past year out of about our 3,400 total drawers in the pin collection. That was a large focus of mine. And then last year we pinned about 15,000 specimens, and I don't even know how to count the amount of vials that were sorted and then moved back up into the pinned collection and that were then into the alcohol collection that were then curated there. So pretty happy with these numbers, but always looking to add more, but it's a balance because I also have volunteers in the arachnology and marine invertebrate collections as well. And then there are meetings and admin. So this has been my volunteers in the entomology collection at DMNS. Any questions? Yeah. Yes. One question. Okay. Cool. Thank you so much, y'all.
A brief announcement that our last sponsor is here today, Pensoft. So at the next break, please stop by, say hi, and thank them for their support. Right. And once again, Luciane Marinoni with Entomological Collections of the Network Taxonline.
Thank you, Chris. Hi, good morning. Here I am again, and today I'm going to talk about the one initiative we have in Paraná, Brazil. It's a network called Taxonline. The state of Paraná is located in southern Brazil. The borders on the north are the states of São Paulo and Mato Grosso do Sul, on the west Argentina and Paraguay, and in the south Santa Catarina. It has almost 20 million inhabitants. The city of Curitiba is the capital. Araucaria angustifolia, the Paraná pine, is one of the symbols of the state, and it was chosen to represent our network. The network of biological collections of Paraná started in 2005. This year, we are celebrating 20 years of existence. Today, the network comprises 65 collections, 19 botanical, 35 zoological, and 11 microbiological. These collections belong to 18 institutions. In 2020, the competence of its researchers and the importance of the collection were recognized, and we were invited by the government of the state through their support foundation, Araucaria Foundation, to become a new research and innovation arrangement. It's called NAPI. NAPIs are networks on various topics that the state finances without the need of competition or calls. Financial resources are distributed according to a project required. Among 2020 and 2026, the NAPI Taxonline will receive about $2 million for the collections, mainly for fellowships. This is very important because this is the recognition of the importance of the collection in our state. One of the main objectives of the network is to make specimen information available in an open access platforms like GBIF. In Brazil, there are currently 2 platforms, the Species Link Project and the Brazilian Biodiversity System, CBBR, which is part of the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation. Here you can see the total of records the network has in open access through the Species Link Project. It is more than 1,200,000 records. In this map, you can see that the species deposited in the collections of Paraná comprises species from all over the world, not only from the state. The importance of the data can be measured by this usage statistics. From 2020 to 2024, more than 8,700,000 records were downloaded for a wide variety of purposes, mostly for scientific and ecological research and also education. You can see that for taxonomy and systematics, not so many records. It's surprising. But we have also for conservation and management and studies of impact and modeling of species. So it's very important. This information is very important to justify the money the government is putting on the collections, because we are always being asked what's the contribution the collections gives to the society, and this is a huge stuff for us. So here you can see the most the number of for education and for research. The network Taxonline has 7 entomological collections. Father Jesus Santiago Mouri, the entomological collection of the University of Paraná, the one that I am a researcher and a curator. Collection of arthropods from the Campos Gerais, the region of Paraná. Entomological collection of Capão da Embuia Natural History Museum. Entomological collection of the Palotina sector. It's also the Federal University of Paraná. Danúcia Urban Entomological Collection of the Federal University for Latin American Integration, UNILA, and the UFFS Entomological Collection. And we have a collection for colicids and also in University of the Federal University of Paraná, Ana Luc Leblanc Entomological Collection. Okay, so all these collections are very important, mainly because they collect material from specific regions, representing areas with particular characteristics. But the largest collection, however, is of historical importance and is internationally known by its researches in Hymenoptera, the group that Father Mouri worked on. We have also a lot, just a minute. The collection is in the Zoology of Department, and it was founded in 1969. And we have one of the most important graduate programs in entomology in Brazil. We have a group of qualified taxonomic researchers with especially strong interests in the Coleoptera, Diptera, Hymenoptera, Lepidoptera, Hemiptera, and Odonata. We have approximately 7 million species, about 3,000 types, which shows the importance of the studies in insects in this collection. And it is the third collection in Brazil. It used to be the fourth. It was the fourth, but after the fire in the National Museum of Rio de Janeiro, we are now the third collection. In some groups, we are the #1 in the world, and mainly the groups that Father Mouri was a specialist. So we right now have more than 350,000 online records, mainly Coleoptera, Hemiptera, Diptera, and Hymenoptera. This is our collection in Paraná. We are now with a very good infrastructure because of the money we have from the Paraná state government. And we have been working a lot with training and also training for students and for curators, and in all groups, but mainly in insects. From all over the collections, we have about 370,000 records online. This is the species link that it's a project of CRIA in Campinas. And this is the paper we just published in the Biological Journal of the Linnean Society. It was a special issue about the collections. And this is all the curators, the main curators, because we have, in each institution, we have a coordinator. I am the general coordinator of the network. And then we wrote about the success of the Taxonline. In Brazil, this is the only kind of network we have. This is a project that is right now a model for other states in Brazil. And so this is a collaborative networking, and it helps us to mitigate the structural challenges, enhance infrastructure and data quality, and increase the public and scientific visibility of collections. You can reach our collections in this. We have our site is in English also, so you can reach all the information in the collections. And we have been doing a lot of meetings. This is, I like to say that our network is more about people than about the online information. We have been talking about a lot of stuff in Brazil, also the legislation. You know that in Brazil right now, we have a lot of legislation to borrow and to loan the loans of the collection. So we have been trying to teach all these curators about what to do with the legislation because of the Nagoya Protocol. I know this is a word between the collections and that it's prohibited, but now we have this kind of problem that we have to solve. So we have been working a lot in this kind of networking, and it has been a success. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'm here to answer. Thank you very much. No? Oh, okay.
Mentioned right at the end that you're doing a lot to train the curators on how to ship specimens from Brazil.
Yeah.
Have you thought about doing that for us? Because a lot of us Brazil and have a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I know. He's asking about the difficulties you guys have in the shipments to Brazil and vice versa. So we have now a lot of documents that we have to have with the other collections, and the mainly is the MTAs. And this is not so hard. This is not difficult. We have with Smithsonian, we have with other collections around the world, and it's working. The problem is that because of most of the curators don't understand what we have to do. And this is something like it's scary. I don't know why, because it has been working. It's not a problem right now. It's a lot of paper, of course. I cannot say that it's you have just to send and you have to just comply the legislation. It's not hard. If you have any questions afterwards, I can talk to you and try to solve. If any one of you have questions, I have been working with the Ministry of Environment in Brazil, and I am right now in the chamber that decides this kind of stuff in the ministry. So if you have any questions, you can send me an email, and I will be happy to help you. Okay. Sorry? Oh, okay, okay. Uh-huh, uh-huh. Yeah, we can work on that. Yeah. Uh-huh. Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Well, with our unexpected bulb failure, if folks want to move over to the side of the room with a working projector, please do that now. We've got just a moment before we need to start the next talk. So there are plenty of seats, including the front row. All right, I think it's time to start our next talk. So hopefully you're all settled. Up next is Tatiana Sepulveda with Unlocking Cerambycidae Collections.
Hello, everyone. Again, a little bit of me. Well, Marinoni is going to be a name you all are going to remember now because he's everywhere. And this is because for many years, I was part also of the Taxonline, where I basically learned everything I know about collections. So today I'm here again to talk to you about this project that is a derivative. It derivates of all the work, the very hard work that we do in the Taxonline. Was not part of the talk, but I think an important lesson now that we're thinking, and we really are now having the conversation to prepare a webinar for you guys. So because we hear some people having difficulties about getting material from Brazil, but yeah, it's not hard. It's not impossible, and it needs some work of paperwork, but it's very doable. We actually do that all the time, so we're looking forward to it. We like to work. So this is one of the things we did as part of the Taxonline at the very beginning of it as an arrangement for innovation and like a part of a big project of the state of Paraná. Along with Luciane and Diego Souza, our specialists in longhorn beetles, we created this website to share images of type material that were resting in the entomological collection of the University of Paraná as Kodachrome slides. As Luciane already explained, in 2020, the Taxonline, which was a consortium of biological collections in the state, became part of the projects of the state of Paraná, turning what they call NAPI, is an arrangement for innovation and research. And the main base for that project is the collection of the Federal University of Paraná, one of the biggest collections in Brazil. So as part of this, we started with a website. So you all can access the Taxonline website. As you see, we like to work because that's me in that is a video. Luciane was the cameraman and I was the model along with Diego. You're gonna see a lot of us in this website. We also build the website. So for us, in Brazil, we developed this big strength and we become very hard workers because things are not easy. It's not easy to get funding for anything. And if you think getting money is hard, you should see how hard it is also to spend it. Like after you have it, it's even harder to be able to spend that money. So we basically started with a lot of enthusiasm with this Taxonline project as an API. We started with this website that you're gonna find very useful for research and for anything you need to know or getting material from Brazil, because you're gonna find a directory of every biological collection in the state. We also share news about legislation, about postings, new jobs, grants, and everything related to these biological collections. We also share in this website a portfolio for services, mostly from microbiological collections. And importantly, for what I'm about to show you, is that we also have links to several repositories that share biodiversity data. So this website I'm going to show you now It is, oh, okay, you can find here in this website also the link to the repository that I'm about to show you, the Renato Contin Marinoni repository. He was a specialist in longhorn beetles. And along with Padre Santiago Moure, they had this project of building a huge database of all type material of longhorn beetles around the world. So this is what Padre Moure did. Here's a photo of the two of them. The Padre, he had these Kodachrome slides and several cabinets that had been resting in our entomological collection for a good number of years. And with the Taxonline, we decided to digitize those Kodachrome slides and also curate all the data and the notes that Father Santiago Moure had made on his trips around the world. This is like a roadmap. You can also find in the website more detail about every collection, the year, and all the notes Padre Moure took in his travels. This was a series of travels. The main goal was to have Hymenoptera type material photograph, but as Padre Moure and Professor Marinoni had this agreement, so he also managed to get images of the longhorn beetles. So they had the Kodachrome slides. That was a different time that was resting in our collection. Only us in the collection had access to it. So we decided with the Taxonline to make that available to the world. And that was also an idea that Professor Marinoni had in the past, and we were able to make this a reality. It was very hard to curate the notes because Padre Moure was very careful and took a lot of notes. But as you see, once again, handwriting coming to haunt us. It was a lot of things to find out about these notes. We had a lot of help from Diego, as you see him here. He's like our specialist in in longhorn beetles, and Norma, a technician at the collection. And of course, Professor Marinoni that started a long time ago to curate and especially catalog all and do all the curation of the taxonomy for the specimens we had in the Kodachrome slides. So at the end, this is kind of how it looked. We managed to get all the valid names and all synonyms and other important data, taxonomic catalog about every specimen in those images. In the website, people can download the highest resolution image that we could have of every specimen. This is how it looks to search. So you start typing there and you're gonna have immediately most of the results. It's not very sophisticated because we program the website too, so we don't have money to hire software engineers, but it's very good. Anything you need to find is going to help you find what you need. We also wanted to include links to other reservoirs or other repositories of information related to longhorn beetles. So there are some other initiatives that were made in the past for friends that work in Cerambycidae, like Gino Neers, that he designed the sites for the specimens that were in the Rio de Janeiro Museum. Also has a website for the type material of Cerambycidae in the Museum of São Paulo. And there are some other initiatives mostly from European researchers that you can find there. As you see then, not just the connection to other repositories, but in this website that we made, this is how our website for the Padre Moure and Professor Marinoni images look like. You can find those links, but you can also find a little bit about the history of research in longhorn beetles in Brazil. Longhorn beetles research in general has had a lot of input from Brazilian researchers. So we wanted to do a little bit of also that, like bring to people interested in longhorn beetles a little about that history of researchers there. So here are those links to other catalogs, because in Europe and in Brazil, people is very interested always in organize this information and give it to the world. In one of the links also you're gonna find, for example, the biggest gathering of information, the biggest taxonomical catalog of longhorn beetles in the New World is from the Brazilian researcher Miguel Monet. All those tools you can find online in these websites, which is amazing. Like longhorn beetle people is very interested in get the information organized and online. So we wanted to be part of that initiative. We also then give some tribute to our longhorn beetle people, our researchers. These are some of our more important researchers in the group. We also have a whole panel of current researchers in longhorn beetles. You can check there and have some contact information and some information about the things they're working right now, in case you want to contact them. So with the first phase of our website, we managed to have around 4,000 images of a longhorn type material and other material in museums around the world from the travels of Padre Mode in our website that you can find right now. And we, as we speak, we're working on the subfamily Cerambycidae. We are already digitizing that. We're in the process of curating all the catalog, all the taxonomic catalogs of this species, so we can put that information organized in the website. We also have worked through the longhorn beetle type material in the entomological collection of the Federal University of Paraná that we will make available in the website too. And yeah, we hope soon to get those 8,000 and some records. We are very proud because when we put online the first part of the Lamini subfamily, we had a lot of feedback. Many researchers in longhorn beetles reach out to us, of course, correcting some things, but also giving us more material and giving us a good input and feedback about the website, which means these tools are really used. So our interest in getting these things out just have grown since then, because we see the interest in people to use all these tools. And with that, I thank you all for your attention. Longhorn beetles rule. Thank you all. Any questions? Yes? The what, sorry? Do you know what will happen to Miguel's Monet catalog after he passes away? She is asking if we know what's going to happen to Miguel Monet's catalog. Miguel Monet was an amazing longhorn beetle researcher and an amazing person. Everybody loves him. So many people is thinking actively and continue his legacy, because that is a huge legacy that he did with all this gathering all these documents. He was very careful and dedicated a lot of time to that work. We are all having that same conversation. I'm a deep tourist. I kind of do things with longhorn beetles, but I know, but the Monets are close friends, and we know probably give some more work to do to Luciane. But yeah, we definitely, people's talking about this, and there's so many people that believes in his legacy and is very willing to keep working on it. So probably soon we will know more about how that will be continuing. Yeah.
And up next, we have a pre-recorded lightning talk by Jack Whisenant on the squashed in the pages of history.
from a previous talk in the ECN meeting this year. I'm Jack Whisenant, and we are presenting a curious little specimen that was sent to the Cornell University Insect Collection. We are all trying to do right by the specimen. Best practices for preservation and conservation of entomological collections are foremost in all of our minds. That's why we're here. And yet, some specimens are preserved in rather unconventional ways. Diagnostics labs give all sorts of wild and interesting stories. You could fill a book. Speaking of books, in 2016, the CUIC was sent a specimen from Von Hock art restorations through the USDA Plant Genetics Research Division. The conservator, Alexandra Von Hock, had been restoring a religious manuscript, and she encountered what she charmingly called an insect cadaver smashed between the pages. The timing of when this insect was squished by an over-enthusiastic page turn makes this possibly the oldest specimen in the CUIC. The book itself was made in 1597 in England, and it was sealed in a vault from 1820 until 2016 when the conservation began. This means that the fly was, shall we say, collected sometime between 1597 and 1820. There are many things that can be pressed between the pages of a book, notably leaves, flowers, mementos, all sorts of things carefully and lovingly laid between the pages. Somehow, I don't think that was the intent with this tragic little fellow. When we examined the specimen in lateral view, we could deduce that the collection method was sudden and severe dorsal-ventral compression. At first glance, you almost wonder if it was a hippoboscid or a moradid, perhaps. However, the specimen does look relatively normal from a dorsal view. It's unfortunately headless, which poses some challenges to accurate identification. But we can at least agree that it's a muscid or at least in Muscoidia. If anyone would like to contribute further insight, we're happy to hear it. Interestingly, the reason that the specimen came to the collection through the USDA Plant Genetics Lab was because in the same book, the conservator found an apple seed, which was sent to Cornell because apples are a big thing here too. They analyzed the seed, and apparently the apples are genetically identical to a variety that was cultivated in the gardens of King Louis XVI of France, who reigned in the late 1700s. While you can't necessarily make a direct link based on that alone, it is an interesting connection to think about. So invite and celebrate collaborations between museum professionals across multiple disciplines. And please, don't shut your books too quickly. Thank you for your time, and have a great rest of the conference.
All right. For our next talk, unfortunately, some travel issues, so it's also going to be pre-recorded, but we have Doris Lagos-Kutz exploring the usefulness of the USA Midwest Suction Trap Network and other taxa besides aphids.
Okay, hello everyone. Thank you so much to the organizer for the invitation and for and to my co-authors as well. I want to thank the wonderful people for being the backbone of my research work for this year, Brenda Molano Flores, my research undergrad assistants, Amy Chair Kohler for her wonderful help and willingness always to train my students. And also this year we have 4-H participants that present a project in entomology in Champaign County, and they earned their first place ribbons, and so they were really excited about it. They thank me for it. Also, my mode of thankfulness, I want to thank my former professor, Florinda Vergara, and my Dr. Bowling, who has been a wonderful mentor and also father figure to me. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the Suction Trap Network story. It all started with the soybean aphid. an Asian invasive species that Dr. Bowling identified in 2000, early 2000. So he decided to build a set of traps in that he located and research stations of University of Illinois. But since the soybean aphid continued became a major problem in soybean production, he was asked to build more traps, and he did. Actually, he distributed and set all these traps across the Midwest in 2005. And in 2012, 13, the population of soybean aphids started to decrease, and so there wasn't much money for supporting the network. In 2015, Dr. Bowling ran the network, did all the work by himself. He didn't get much funding. So he took all the material, everything to the basement of his house. He worked over it. I couldn't help. Actually, I got a position as a postdoc, USDA, ARS, at the Banner unit. And so, yeah, I couldn't help him. And at the end of 2015, he came to me and he said, Doris, I'm done working on this project. There was not much money for it. I talked to Dr. Hyman, my USDA supervisor, and he actually said to me, yes, if I wanted to continue, I would continue, but the work that I already said, I have to keep working, work some reviews, but I increased a lot of work for myself, but it's okay. I didn't mind the work, but it really kind of hit me for giving different directions for the network, because there was not really during Dr. Bowling's time management for data or other visions for working with different taxa and stuff like that. So here are my objectives for this network: continue monitoring other insects besides aphids. Don't mean that the work with aphids is done, but I want to explore more. Make the aphid data and also more data to be available for modeling, for predictions, and also share this information through a well-established platform. So you might ask yourself, what is the suction trap? So the suction trap is a tower about 6 meters tall. And at the bottom, it worked actually as a vacuum system. At the bottom, there is a motor, and there is a jar collector that is a mix. It has a liquid, a mix of water and antifreeze. Antifreeze avoids insect degradation. Work that we have done found out that it preserves RNA, DNA, and also it's good for shipping because it's no hazardous material. So lucky me, I met Joel Forrest. He was really excited about setting up the Suction Trap Network website. I deposit the aphids data into his system. And so, we don't have currently available all the aphids data, all the information, but it's kind of filtered and it can be available upon request. So along with that work that I have done, what was doing with monitoring, I continued with soybean thrips research. To USDA was more interested because it was a vector soybean necrosis virus. It's a disease that was discovered in 2008. And so I kind of line up by using the suction trap to monitor for these thrips along with the eastern flower thrips, because they were mentioned that they both vectors of SVMB. And so what I did is collect data from between 2020 and 2023 for eastern flower thrips, for soybean thrips, for insidious flower bugs, And so we did correlation for with weather, landscape, we checked early, late activity, density. So this publication went out last October, and so you guys are very welcome to check it out. So along with also work with this work on monitoring, I also we screened the soybean trees caught in the trap for soybean necrosis virus. We got positive results only for soybean thrips, but no Easter flower thrips. So I give up on monitoring Easter flower thrips, so I continue monitoring for soybean thrips and flower bugs, insidious flower bugs. So lucky me again, there is another invasive species that show up, corn hopper. It's actually a threat to corn because it's a vector of a complex diseases, cornerstone diseases, caused by bacteria, phytoplasma, and maize virus. So we did monitor, I did monitor for last year and this year. You can see this line for 2025, which the numbers are greater than the one in 2005 on the bottom, 2025. And so in addition of the monitoring and checking the dispersal of this vector, we did screen for bacteria, spiroplasma, okay? And we got so far positive for location from Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Nebraska, and Nebraska. So we are going to keep up with this research. So with the mode of using the Aphids data for modeling, I align with Mike Crossley, and so he got actually the grant from USDA NIFA for data science for agriculture systems. And so he is planning to use artificial intelligence for platform modeling. So far, I haven't seen any results, so I'm not going to talk much about this. So the suction trap is an area of soups. It has tons of insects, and I really, you guys, whoever wants, please reach out to me. We want to develop some kind of research. So far, I have submitted an NSF proposal with Jessica Kassman, Abigail Martens, and Deborah Finke to check out the aphid population, parasitoids, correlated with parasitoids, because especially to be focused on the effect of precipitation or dryness in these populations. But it also interested me on checking what are the abundance of hymenopters in the trap. You see this graph, I found that really at the end of June and until almost late hours, the population of wasps are very low. In not all the states have great numbers of hymenopters. The only thing, the first peak I see is from Illinois, and then there's one in hours, late hours for Nebraska, and then this big peak is from Missouri. So yeah, hopefully I can check it out the species composition of hymenopterus and see what more we can get out of these results. Likely, what research in ants. I have talked to Jackson Harms, Carl Roder, a lady with ant disorders, so we can really understand what are the factors that affect migration of ants, or why they, what are the peaks, especially, for example, we count all the ants in different states, and so we found very interesting peaks. We have one in early June from Wisconsin and Illinois, and then we don't see anything until mid-September, where we Aphids in Michigan, Indiana, in Missouri. I mean, I can talk and talk more about why ants migrate, no shown, mating, weather changes, disturbance of nests, and on. So hopefully we can come up with a good proposal to be submitted to NSF or any funding resources. Same with the spiders. I align with Mark Doremus and Mark Mine, who is an expert on ants, spiders taxonomy, and Matt is more interested in microbiome. So we'll see how we come up with a plan to continue developing these studies on spiders. So this actually proposal we submitted yesterday with Thomas Chappell, Roger Margaret, and Yola Forest to USDA and NIFA in the section of pest and beneficial agriculture systems. So, right, modeling, predictions, but what really motivates me, what really makes me excited is that the data is gonna be shared in real time. So all that work that we have been doing, the effort that we can do it is, the samples are collected every week, we process the sample, but then, it has been shared, raw data, it has been shared, all the insects are present, but what it really needs, what are the factors that affected this increasing or decreasing populations. Really, I hope we get this grant, and so good luck to us. Also, I want to share these parasitic mites that we saw in flies, in mosquitoes, and moths. So if somebody is interested, please reach out to me. With that, I want to thank you all for your attention, and I want to acknowledge the funding resources and my colleagues, Aphidologist, Susan Halbert, my big fan. I am a big fan of her actually, and big thanks to the social track collaborators. I mean, this format couldn't be done without them, and thank you all again.
Is that error still up there? Okay, we need a little audience participation because I can't see where the mouse is, but if anybody can tell me if I'm at all close to that X. Yeah. Oh no, I really can't see anything from here. Left, okay. Oh. Nope. Is it gone? Okay, sorry. And thank you, Doris. I know Doris is participating online, but for time, we're going to have to continue. So our next lightning talk is by Victoria Bayless on some little known Leps from the LSAM.
Curator of the Louisiana State Museum, Entomology, Louisiana. The LSAM is the major repository for insects in the state, and we have over 1 million specimens. Most people in the museum community know the LSAM as having an important coleoptera collection, but today I want to let you all know about one of our other collections, the Lepidoptera of the museum. The majority of the taxa represented in the collection is shown here is indeed coleoptera. The Lepidoptera represent a much smaller slice of the pie, with other orders surpassing the Lepidoptera in numbers. However, our Lep collection is unique in that it has a large number of donated specimens, all from one individual, collected mostly in one locality in Louisiana for over 50 years, making this a unique collection with incredible data. There will be Lepidopterists who are aware of Vernon Brew by name and by his many publications on Louisiana laws. Vernon has been donating specimens to the LSAM for over 40 years and has donated thousands of beautifully prepared, labeled, and identified specimens. We are honored to have these be a part of the museum. There are other museums around the country that have fruit specimens. We are not alone in this. However, we have been informed by Vernon and Charlotte Brew that the remaining specimens in their collection, approximately 500,000, including some beetles, at their home in Abita Springs, Louisiana, will be donated to the LSAM when Vernon is no longer with us. This is a remarkable and very valuable collection. We will be pleased to offer this material in the amazing data set it represents for research. These are just some of the images of the donations that we have received over the last 4 years. Many of the unique species and more valuable specimens are actually still in the Brew collection, and the numbers of Louisiana moths represented will increase significantly when this collection is moved onto campus. Because space is always an issue for Lepidoptera specimens, I enjoy showing pictures of these Leps and how they are shingled when they are delivered to us, requiring the reverse order removal from the drawers and boxes to be finally incorporated into the museum collection. This drawer is one of the many that still remain in the Brew collection at their home. Although Vernon specializes in moths, it would be hard for him not to keep a collection of these Lycaenids, one of the prettiest butterflies found in the museum. So remember in the future that the LSAM has more than beetles. Also, we have hundreds of jars of ethanol preserved material that has been donated by Vernon Brew that was collected from his Murphy Labor traploids. This material covers more orders and represents thousands of specimens. We always welcome visitors to come and see if any of these specimens would help you with your research. Thank you so much for listening.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here today, even though ESA has already started. I'm Jennifer Girón, Curator of Invertebrate Zoology at the Museum of Texas Tech University, and today I wanted to essentially tell you about a paper that came out earlier this year that was conceived as an attempt to bridge the gap between what we collections people do in terms of imaging with the needs of downstream analysis using computational methods. All this got started in 2024 when I took part of an event called Beetlepalooza, where an interdisciplinary team of researchers came together to develop and refine AI tools for beetle identification and trait measurement. This paper was one of the outcomes of the workshop, and I would say its authorship represents the composition of the actual attendance of the workshop. Here in blue, we have beetle workers and collections people. In green, ecologists, some of them with a hint of informatics, and then all the others with no shading were primarily data scientists and informaticians, as far as I could tell. When I saw the call to participate in this workshop, my first reaction was of total skepticism. What do they mean by beetle identification? And when the call for participants indicated that they would have data available from NEON. For those who are not familiar, NEON is a project with stations all over the country where they systematically collect different kinds of biological and environmental samples. On the beetle side of things, NEON samples essentially mean ground beetles in the family Carabidae, which is a cosmopolitan group of nearly 40,000 species and over 2,000 genera, and are represented in Canada and the United States by 15 subfamilies, 56 tribes, 215 genera, and more than 2,500 species. And thanks to Evan, wait for these updated numbers. So again, what did they mean by beetle identification? So during this workshop, one of the goals was to come up with a framework or a set of recommendations to optimize biological specimen imaging for downstream uses in computer vision applications. The first thing that became obvious during the workshop is that collections people who generate images have a very different perspective compared to those people who want to use those images in computer vision applications. I would argue that collections people are usually looking for accurate representation of phenotype, where the species or the characters are shown clearly in the image, but this also might be just my bias as a taxonomist. Whereas informaticians are looking for standardized data that they can analyze to get additional information out of them. This figure summarizes the recommendations, and I'm not going to go through each of them, but I'm just going to highlight a few. In blue are aspects related to image capture, and in yellow, aspects of data quality and usability. I know in this community, we are decent at having general standards for most of the aspects in blue, like having neutral background, adding size calibration, and having good illumination for our images. But some other aspects of image capture might be a little challenging, particularly when we have very small specimens, like adding calibration for color, achieving high resolution when we only have standard lenses available, or very small, dark, and shiny specimens, of which some carabids are good examples. It was also interesting to learn about the expectations that particularly the informaticians have for images generated in collections. For instance, they expected that images are always taken at the same height of the camera, which in my experience varies even with how the specimen is mounted. This probably works well for herbarium specimens, for instance, but not necessarily for three-dimensional specimens like insects. Some of the other participants were not even aware of the existence of focus stacking, and it was difficult to assess how that process affects image use downstream in their analysis. You can definitely tell that those that use images for informatic pipelines have probably never generated images of natural history specimens and don't have a grasp of the range of variations that one can come across. There were some aspects where the three main content areas represented in the workshop, collections, informaticians, and ecologists, disagreed. For instance, one point that took a lot of back and forth was the discussion about having multiple specimens in one image. As far as I'm aware, collections people do not typically image multiple specimens at once, except for whole drawer digitization, which we can argue that is more an efficiency kind of improvement, but it's not an ideal way of imaging specimens. Again, here showing my bias. We also generate those kinds of images when we are sharing images of bycatch, for example. For samples collected in ecological projects, you often end up with tens or hundreds of specimens, even after sorting to morphospecies. These high numbers of specimens is what ecologists are interested in using when for measuring traits. So the goal of the workshop to develop and refine AI tools for trait measurement was at the forefront for the ecologists in the group. The goal for ecologists, particularly for graduate students, was to be able to extract trait data from an image with multiple specimens in an efficient way, so that they didn't have to spend a lot of time measuring specimens one by one. They were not interested in identification here. They just want to know how big these beetles are, what's their overall shape, and if they can tell from the photo if the beetle can fly or not. For the informatics standpoints, there are also issues with these kinds of images, starting with algorithms failing to properly recognize where one specimen ends and the other starts when parts of two specimens overlap. If you ask me, my recommendation would be do not include multiple specimens in one image unless they are clearly separated, which has several implications in terms of time needed and space available when you're doing a large imaging project. Nevertheless, there are some options on the informatics side to indicate bounding boxes around each specimen, but it will take some extra steps, which doesn't necessarily follow the concept of optimizing. A point that the ecologists and informaticians did not quite understand were aspects of magnification and resolution. In their mind, mixing specimens of different sizes in an image would be acceptable as long as the image was of high enough resolution. And I had to explain that this was an issue more of using the right tool for the job. For example, you should not be using a flatbed scanner for imaging mites, for example. No matter how high the resolution of the scanner might be, you are probably not going to be able to get all the details needed for species identification, for example. Now, for aspects of data quality and usability, these are the ones that are, in my opinion, or at least in my case, the weakest points of our community. Partly because we are not thinking of this information in the same way as the informaticians are. Speaking of file formats, for example, the common practice that I have seen is that we have high-resolution TIFF files, which are usually large in local or institutional storage, but what is shared publicly is typically a relatively small JPEG file. The problem with this is that converting TIFF files into JPEGs eliminates a lot of information of the image itself, which might be valuable information for computer vision applications and generate issues like color bleeding, which you can notice when the limits between parts of an image lose their definition. So the recommendation here is to save your smaller shareable files as PNG files instead, which is a format that preserves every pixel of the original image. A big issue for everyone in the room was that of metadata. In the collections and ecology worlds, we commonly deal with biodiversity data standards, and we might be even familiar with the audiovisual core, which is used for describing multimedia files associated with specimen records. On the other hand, informaticians do have high standards for recording absolutely everything that has to do with the image file itself, since that can have an effect on what can be done with an image in an analytical pipeline. Their expectation is that whenever there is a batch of images, which is what they consider a data set, there is a separate metadata file that is machine readable and incorporates all the details listed here for every single image. And I don't know about you, but I have never either seen or generated a file like that for the images that we have at the collection. So there is clearly something to correct on our end right there. So the bottom line is that even if we disagree or dislike all this computer vision stuff, we are generating data that someone is going to use whether we like it or not. And even if we don't see or care about the downstream uses of the images we generate at collections, because in our mind, they are serving the purpose that they were meant to serve, we should at least have in our mind that others might find our data useful, and if we can tweak our practices just enough to make our images more likely to be used, and also in the spirit of reducing the likelihood that errors are introduced, particularly in training, in data sets for model training, then maybe we should consider that. But the main take home for me is really that we need to talk to other people, talk to ecologists, talk to informaticians, and explain to them why your practices are the way they are. Make them aware of caveats, issues, and considerations, but also listen to them, what they need and why. Here is the DOI to the paper, and you can get to it using that QR code, but you also have the link available on page 39 of your ECN program. I should acknowledge that this was most definitely a group effort, and kudos to Allison East, who is all the way back there in the photo, for wrangling interdisciplinary team of people to complete and publish this paper. Before I go, I have an announcement. For 2026, the Invertebrate Zoology collection of the Museum at Texas Tech will be able to cover travel costs to bring at least one, but hopefully two, visiting scientists interested in identifying our specimens and potentially using them on their research. Our collection is representative of the southwestern US, but we do have a global coverage, particularly for beetles and butterflies to some extent. If you're interested in visiting and having time at some point, and if you have time at some point in 2026, please reach out. And that's all I have. Thank you for listening, and I'm happy to take any questions. All righty, thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. And our next talk is another lightning talk from Tyler Tenniswood on highlighting data quality issues in digital entomological collections.
My name is Tyler Tenniswood, and today I'm going to be talking to you guys about data quality in entomological collections. But before I begin into this lightning talk, I'll introduce myself a little bit. So I'm currently a graduate student at the University of Florida in the Department of Entomology. However, I was actually previously PhD candidate at the University of Arkansas in Little Rock, where I was looking at computer and information science specifically. However, I've been wanting to move more so into the entomology and kind of eco-informatics realm. So, I thought that this topic in particular has been something I've been interested in for a while, and I thought it's been a good segue into that. And I thought for purposes of this conference, it'd be a good topic to address. So first, what are some examples of data quality issues in entomological data sets? Now, there's obviously a ton besides the 4 that I just listed. But these are the 4 I was going through the literature that I've encountered, and I thought it'd be good to bring up. So one is duplicate records. Obviously those can be either cases where it's duplicates of the same specimen. It's bringing up the exact records, but duplicates of those. Or it could be an example where there's multiple records that refer to the same entity. It might be misspelling, so it's creates a duplicate of that. But it's definitely been a big issue. Next is incorrect taxonomic information. I imagine this has been a bigger issue for older insect collections where, the collection, when it was logged and, put into the database, for example, at the time, might have had incorrect taxonomic information compared to what we know now. So, when you put that in, it might, not necessarily be accurate. Next is ghost records. Now this is something I actually read in a recently published paper where it talks about this concept of ghost records, which is where there's a record of a specimen in a database, but interestingly enough that, that record doesn't have a physical specimen tagged to it. So it's like, oh yeah, it's in the system, but it's like, oh, it doesn't actually link back to anything. So it's really interesting in paper though. I definitely recommend you guys read more about it. It's just overall really interesting. Next is incorrect geographic information. Now, similar to the taxonomic information example, this could be where, at the time it was originally collected, the geographic information might not have been fully up to date or just, just incorrect. And so when you put it in the database, it might not, it's just not a listing to an accurate geographic locality. So these are all just, very interesting examples. These are just the 4 examples for the purposes of this talk. It's, a pretty quick overview, but I thought all of these are definitely, very important issues and, should be definitely looked at. So for the purposes of this talk, if I just dive into one example in particular, which is the duplicate records, and blending my data science background with entomology, I thought that a few good techniques to address that could be the record linkage techniques. So these basically refer to the process of linking or matching multiple records and, based from different data sets to one where they all, they're different data sets, different records, but they all refer to the same particular entity. So it's linking all those across different data sets, different databases. So there's 2 ways you do that. I won't go into too much detail, but there's exact record matching where, it'll match multiple of the exact same record versus field specific matching where it might look at specific fields, for example, and maybe there's like a misspelling in one of the fields, or it can, which is when it can utilize things like fuzzy logic, or it can also use phonetic algorithms to be able to kind of parse through, if they found phonetically similar. So it's just a very interesting technique. But anyway, from a more practical standpoint, though, from a collection manager or a database manager, there are a few different tools and libraries and packages that you could use to address duplicate records. One of those being the record linkage toolkit, which is available in Python, as well as record linkage, which is available in R. Both of these offer capabilities to use a lot of these record linkage techniques to ultimately help with finding duplicate records, but also just, deduplicating that and being able to a link and merge those, just to simplify your database. But there's also open source tools available. There's a lot more, but one that I've been currently using is OpenRefine. It's been really interesting because it's open source, it's freely available, pretty easy to utilize too. I've noticed, you just upload a CSV file of your data, for example, and then, you can go through the data, and I've been able to kind of parse through some different entomological databases and just, find the duplicates to be able to deduplicate them. So been really interesting. But anyway, this has been a lightning talk. So I have to wrap it up. Don't want to ramble too long. But I hope you guys enjoyed this presentation, and I hope you guys definitely look more into the references that I've talked about here, just about those data quality issues in entomological collections. And last but certainly not least, feel free to reach out to me if you guys want to talk or brainstorm at all about data quality in entomological collections. It's something I've been really interested in lately. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed.
And up next, Lily Hart with methods in publishing museum specimen data to GBIF.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for all sticking around for this portion of the ECN meeting. Today, I'm going to talk a bit about how I published museum specimen data to GBIF. So Tyler's talk actually was a great segue into what I will be talking about today. So I'm Lily. I am a master's student in the DeWalt lab at the University of Illinois. I'm currently working on the stoneflies of Arkansas. And but my background is in collections, so I've worked as an INHS insect collection assistant since 2018. So I took some time in between my undergrad and my master's to get some work experience before I started up school again. But this year I published a data paper, as you can see up on the top there, in Biodiversity Data Journal. Shout out to Pensoft. And I published the data set on GBIF, and this is a preliminary version 1 Arkansas stonefly data set that I've published. So as I continue my work in my master's and visit collections and gather data that I haven't yet accessed, I will be publishing a version 2 of that data set. That will be more complete, hopefully. So today I wanted to share some of my methods on how I did that exactly, some of the hurdles that I came across, but also calling out for a general need for a standards of practice change in how we think about our data and what we do with it. So why should we publish our data? Isn't the paper enough? And I only have 10 minutes, so the short answer is no, it's not enough. If you're doing research with specimens, you should be publishing all of the specimen data as well, either as like a supplementary file with your paper or as a data set to GBIF where it's shareable and findable for other people to use. Also, the future is looking uncertain in the sciences, at least here in the US. We've been dealing with chronically low funding as it is in collections, but now we have had major cuts to federal funding like the Institute of Museum and Library Sciences and NSF that a lot of us rely on to help fund our research. So that's causing us to think outside the box and think outside of ourselves. I think a lot of people also are very protective and precious with their data and maybe are afraid to share it, but
I think the message is kind of being spread that we need to be publishing all the data that we can in order to share it. So we have, you know, backup versions of all of our data sets as well. And we're all going to die someday. So if you have a bunch of data that's in like an Excel spreadsheet from 2005 stuck on your, you know, 15-year-old laptop, you should get it out into the world before we can't open it again. Collection managers and curators, I think most of the people in this room are probably familiar with this process, as a lot of institutions don't have a designated like data management person. So we have to be a little more dynamic in our positions and know how to publish data. But if you're a student, this is a really great way to add to your CV. So you can get a citation for your data paper, but then also, you know, a second one for the data set itself. And, you know, our success is measured using this metric of how many publications you have. So it's a nice way to bulk up your CV. So ultimately, we do want our data to tell a story. But first, we must transform it from chaos. So that pile of Legos up at the top there, that might be your messy spreadsheet. That might be your voucher specimens you haven't yet processed. I don't know what your problems are, but we need to get it to be at least visually presentable, right? So that we can organize the data and get it to a cohesive spot where we can tell a story through data analyzation. So how do we do this and how do we make the data fair? So FAIR stands for findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. Okay, so what did I learn in this process? That merging data sets is difficult. So I've worked in collections for a little bit now, so I am familiar with dealing with my own institution's data in TaxonWorks. But I wasn't prepared for all the crappy data that I would get from other people that are my collaborators. So, you know, this is why TADWIG or Biodiversity Information Standards exists. They create that we should all be using and following and telling other people about, especially like ecologists, people that aren't necessarily familiar with data standards. A lot of my entomology cohort, they have no idea what Darwin Core is, so I'm trying to indoctrinate them as well. But yeah, Darwin Core, the quick reference guide is a great website. You can just Google that and it'll come up right away. Keeping your raw data raw is very important. So this means having an untouched, unedited version of all of your data sets that you're going to merge together. Because I guarantee you will make a mistake and you need, you know, something to reference and look back on to get it back to where it needs to be. Versioning refers to explicitly and informatively naming your files. A little example there would be, you know, the 2025 ECN presentation final. That's much more informative than ECN Pres really final or really final or really final that I am guilty of too. I know we all do it. But keeping track of all your versions, which ones are up to date, which ones, what you've changed in each one, kind of annotating as you go along. You could use GitHub to do this for you, actually. I'm actually starting to dabble in, you know, getting that onto my laptop and talking to it through the command line. And I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to learn. And please, in the name of all things holy, please use catalog numbers. I was shocked to learn that some of my collaborators that were sending me the crappy data didn't use catalog numbers. And I don't know how they manage their specimens any other way. It just seems insane to me, but having a universally unique identifier for all of your specimens is the standard these days. And TaxonWorks actually automatically mints a second digital UUID for all of our specimens. So if someone like me, for instance, punches in the wrong catalog number when I'm digitizing, there's that second one that you can rely on as well. Be aware of hidden characters and line endings in your data set. So this refers to the formatting code behind your data set. Basically, I was trying to submit my data set to the GBIF's integrated publishing toolkit. And it kept telling me I had like 25 extra rows of data, even though they weren't there in my spreadsheet, and I didn't understand how that was possible. And Deb Paul back there was like, well, there might be something wrong with the formatting in the code. I was like, okay, great. Can you show me what you're talking about? So we put it in a text editor, and we kept finding these, /R, /N. So that stands for carriage return, where it's going to tell you to start a new line, kind of like a typewriter. So I had all of these rows of data that had these rogue carriage returns, and they were messing up my data set. So we had to clean those out of there. Tyler also talked about OpenRefine. I'm a OpenRefine junkie. I try to tell everyone I know about it, especially if you're a point and click kind of gal like me. I'm not a coder. I am learning. I'm taking a class in data analysis in R currently, but it's a steep learning curve for me. And OpenRefine is a great point and click kind of alternative to that if you're not a Python or R kind of person. Google Sheets and Microsoft Excel, those are pretty basic ones also, for keeping a database. I prefer Google Sheets so I can, share the live version with all of my collaborators. We use TaxonWorks at NHS to manage all of our specimens. And you can export the data already in Darwin Core format. So I usually don't have to do much with our data. It's everyone else's data that has problems. But ChatGPT, that horse with the keyboard, again, I did contact ChatGPT to help me write code and regular expressions to clean my data. So OpenRefine is really cool in that you can use APIs, so application programming interfaces, to help you, check names. In my instance, I was having it ping global names and check all the names of my stoneflies to make sure they were accurate. Something like that would take me like 2 hours to do, and it did it in 60 seconds. So using APIs is really awesome as well. Regular expressions, these are like a sequence of characters that help you identify patterns in a string of text. So it's kind of like the find function, like find and replace, but it helps you find things like in values of your spreadsheet and pull it out and then put it into a new column. So you're not having to copy and paste things over a million. Sublime Text, that's the text editor I use, again, to check for those carriage returns, and GitHub in the future for versioning. So once the data set is all cleaned and it's ready to go, how do you actually get into GBIF? Well, I published my data paper, The Stoneflies of Arkansas, in Biodiversity Data Journal, and that's a Pensoft Publishers journal, an online journal, and they manage their own instance of GBIF's integrated publishing toolkit. So it has to come from, your data set kind of has to come from a reputable source if it's going to be funneled into GBIF. So they gave me a login, so I had access to the IPT. I dumped it in there. It helped me map all of my columns to Darwin Core format if they weren't already. And then I registered the data set before I published my paper, actually, so that I could receive a DOI so that I could cite my data set in my paper, and that way it's more easily findable later on, and you can just go download it from GBIF. It's also as a supplementary file in my data paper, but I wanted it in both places. So in conclusion, create a plan for your data before you begin a project or working with collaborators. Help catch them up to speed, or maybe you need to be caught up to speed with some of this stuff. So find the people who can help you. This project, it took me probably over a year to get all this done, and it required a lot of knocking on office doors and begging people to help me. And luckily, I have a lot of great people in my corner that were willing to help me, but asking for help is really hard. And pride keeps us from learning new skills. And I really like this quote: "It's impossible to learn that of which you think you already know." We all have workflows that work for us, or we think that they work for us, but actually there's probably a lot of other options out there for you to do things more accurately or more quickly. So talk to people about your problems, not only the good things that are going on. I know there's a lot of negativity happening and we don't want to hear complaints, but that's kind of the juicy gossip that I like to hear. Like, what didn't work for you, so I don't have to waste my time on it. Lastly, just thanking everyone who has ushered me to this, place in my academic journey, my advisor, and Dr. Ed DeWalt, Deb and Matt, everyone at the Species File group, the TaxonWorks community, my lab mates, coworkers in the insect collection, and of course ECN for inviting me to speak today. If you have any questions, you could email me. If you're into parasocial relationships, you can follow me on Instagram, even though I don't really have time to be on there these days. Also, if you are a collections manager or you have access to specimens, I'm looking for all Arkansas stoneflies to include in my version 2 data set. So if you have some, please let me know. I have some fancy business cards I'm trying to get rid of, and I'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lily. Unfortunately, no time for questions, but find one of her business cards. Our next up is is Jennifer Smith talking about bridging biology and code, an image sorting tool for biological collections.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Smith, and I'm an undergraduate biology student at Texas Tech University. I've been working at the Museum of Texas Tech University, where I noticed a gap in how our butterfly specimens were being digitally managed. Instead of continuing with the existing manual process, I decided to design a solution of my own. Today, I'll share how I developed a web-based tool that connects coding and biology to help organize a confiscated butterfly collection donated to the museum by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. The museum at Texas Tech University is an independent department within the university with a master's program in heritage and museum sciences. It holds over 8.8 million objects, including human-made artifacts in the collections of anthropology, art, clothing and textiles, and history, as well as natural history specimens in the collection of paleontology and the Natural Science Research Laboratory, known as the NSRL. The NSRL contains 4 collections: mammals, birds, genetic resources, and invertebrate zoology. The invertebrate zoology collection is the largest collection of the museum by number of specimens, with about 4.5 million of them. This collection typically offers paid hourly positions for students as an opportunity for hands-on learning by developing skills in collections management and biodiversity informatics. One of the components of the invertebrate zoology collection is a collection of specimens confiscated by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, composed of about 40,000 specimens coming from all over the world. The bulk of this collection is made of beetles, butterflies, and moths. From that larger confiscated group, My work has focused specifically on the butterflies, which includes over 700 morphospecies from all over the world. My main task has been digitizing and organizing them so they can be studied and shared more effectively. Like many confiscated materials, these butterflies have highly variable data. Some lack locality or collection dates, while others are only missing species names. Because this information is what gives specimens their scientific value, the lack of it makes them difficult to catalog and underutilized in research. That challenge is what ultimately led me to develop a different approach to managing the digital records. When I began digitizing the confiscated butterfly collection, I quickly realized that much of our workflow depended on images. A representative of each species is photographed and assigned a code that becomes the file name. Then, all of those images are stored together in a single folder, making it difficult to visually locate or verify individual specimens. To catalog a new one, I had to scroll through hundreds of images to ensure it hadn't already been photographed. As the collection grew, that process became increasingly time-consuming and prone to small errors. This manual approach worked when there were only a few dozen morphospecies, but at several hundred, and with more added every week, it simply wasn't sustainable. That inefficiency became the main problem my project set out to solve. To address this problem, I developed a custom web-based tool using Google Apps Script, which combines JavaScript and HTML. The goal was to create a lightweight system that connects specimen images stored in Google Drive to their metadata in a spreadsheet. Here, you can see the gallery interface. Each image is automatically linked to its file name and URL in the sheet, creating a visually organized system for this collection. Once an image is uploaded, users can create tags using the Tag Manager and then tag images by any feature like color, family, or wing pattern. These tags are entirely customizable, making this tool highly adaptable to other collections. Those tags then become filterable. For example, if I'm cataloging a yellow butterfly in the family Pieridae, I can type yellow and Pieridae into the search bar and instantly see all possible matches instead of scrolling through hundreds of files. There is also a hover panel feature that displays spreadsheet information for individual images, allowing important information to be displayed in the gallery itself. These fields are also completely customizable. The tool is still in active development, but preliminary testing has shown that it can automatically organize and display specimen images in a searchable format. The gallery and tag manager are both functional, and the interface already demonstrates how visual organization could improve efficiency in cataloging workflows. Although the tool hasn't yet been integrated into daily cataloging, it has laid the groundwork for a more streamlined system once fully polished. My next steps include refining the interface, improving filtering logic, and expanding search and filtering capabilities. In summary, this project demonstrates how just some custom code can make a meaningful difference in how we manage and use biological collections. Lastly, I'd like to thank the Museum of Texas Tech University for supporting this project and acknowledge the open source resources and online tutorials that helped me learn the coding skills needed to develop this tool. Thank you all so much for your time and interest. If you have any questions or would like to learn more about the project, please feel free to reach out using this email address.
All right, and our next presentation by Samuel Howard, unfortunately another travel complication on biogeographic organization and entomological collections is going to be another pre-recorded talk.
And have it these. Good afternoon, my name is Samuel Howard, and today I will be presenting Biogeographic Organization, Entomological Collections, a state of affairs and a path forward. This project was in collaboration with Crystal Meyer and Pat Boone. Most, if not all of us, are familiar with this map here. Many different collections have used this biogeographic map and scheme to sort their holdings. And it is useful as different biota inhabit these regions and researchers use this biogeography system and scheme to navigate a collection. However, these color codes, specifically the ones used for the Nearctic, Africa, and Asia, are problematic and create an issue since they look to appear based on stereotyped skin color. In short, this system is useful as it helps further organize the inherent chaos of life. However, it does have issues that we should address. Around September 2024, Dr. Meyer and I were discussing the problematic nature of the color scheme used in biogeographic organization when our resident bugologist of the benthic variety, Pat Moon, asked an interesting question on the ECN listserv. Together, we decided to reach out, collaborate, and investigate what is known about the state of affairs of biogeographic sorting and what problems the community has voiced, since no one has really addressed the issue. It is clear that there is an assumed correlation between the colors used and skin color, and it is offensive and does not create a welcoming environment in collections. How many times have you given a tour and had to explain away why black is used for Africa or yellow for Asia? These colors make a collection space uncomfortable for many, and they have problems for people with colorblindness. So clearly there's an issue that exists, and it is an issue we have inherited from our predecessors. The responses to this email confirmed that as a community, we know this issue exists, and clearly there is a problem. However, it is also clear that people do care. What is most apparent in the responses is that there's no clear consensus on the solution to this issue. Rather, we have collectively kicked the can down the road. Doing nothing costs nothing, but protracts the problem for the future. And removing the system costs financial resources and time without adding any inherent value to our holdings. The heart of the issue is, in light of the lack of resources collections have, while balancing usability of the collection, what is the most prudent step forward? Doing something new costs financial resources and time, but does add value to our holdings while making it more welcome and accessible place. So should we stop applying the system because of its problematic scheme? Should we continue due to its utility but wrestle with the issue and kick the can down the road? Or should we try something new? From the survey sent out, we have 44 unique responses from 32 museums at 5 nations, with the United States having had a high representation. Almost all of those who responded represent research collections, and half of those from large collections of 1 million specimens or more. Half of all the respondents showed interest in subsorting, and of all the responses, there were 13 unique sources for biogeographic citations. While the regions are generally agreed upon, there's no clear standard that everyone refers to. And out of all responses, 18 collections subsorted 25 do not. This could be a contributing factor to the decision paralysis of the community and represent a lack of communication among us. There appears to be interest, but as with all things, funding is a significant barrier. There are people without interest as well, but maybe this could change with a system that is clear and accessible and that is free from these inherited issues. There appears to be a general agreement on some colors over others. The Palearctic appears inconsistent with some collections, while problematic color codes like Africa and Asia are consistent. So we all agree that this current system has issues, but the decision has been not to continue over adaptation or removal, possibly due to the resource cost of removal or adaptation. But let's do something about that. This is an issue, but it also presents an opportunity to create something new that is accessible, welcoming, and useful. So what is the path forward? We would advocate for this third way, this doing something and creating a more accessible and welcoming space. So these are some proposed colors, and in choosing them, I tend to preserve non-problematic colors like the Palearctic, Neotropical, and Oceania, while removing problematic ones. Any colors chosen should be coupled with abbreviations to assist in accessibility, and additionally, you could use shapes to further distinguish the different regions. Additional regions should be added for a collection with unique concentrations like Madagascar or a state or regional collection. And old colors should not be used because the transition would cause confusion if different regions have the same color, like while the system is being transitioned. Here are proposed colors and how they would look to people with different kinds of color blindness. Any color palette chosen should be distinct. You should be able to tell them apart from each other in each different blindness type. And they should contrast with existing non-problematic ones, making any transition less costly due to the eliminating problematic color codes. We could make something new, solve a problem, add value to the collection while making our collections more accessible and welcoming to more people. Currently, a lot of us refer to Schrader and Wallace, and they are the gold standard biogeographic regions. Within the survey, Luciane was also suggested. However, whatever standard selected, it should have clear denominations and probably should follow political boundaries to ease facilitation so that you do not have to research if a Mexican specimen goes with Nearctic or Neotropical, or if a specimen from China should go with Asia or with Palearctic. In short, we need a biogeographic standard that we can either cite or create to maintain consistency across collections and facilitate usability. I'd like to have a shout out to the random student only collections box furnished by my co-presenter Pat. So these colors are not a constriction, they are a starting point in the backbone from which to build off. Different collections have different foci and have different needs, and regions and codes can and should be added if it benefits your stakeholders and users. However, it would benefit us to choose a basic backbone that's consistent across all collections. And you can add different regions according to your holdings or how the collections is used, and it should be tailored to who it serves. And we are not advocating this stringent standard of that flexibility. Rather, this is a conversation with a starting point. However, whatever colors are chosen should probably not be problematic and create a new issue, and should be tested against any proposed or chosen colors to ensure that it's friendly for colorblind folk and accessible. We've heard from many people, but mostly in the United States of America, and it is unknown how far-reaching this problem is and if others are interested in solving it. We encourage you all to keep talking to us so that we can reach a consensus and solve this issue and do something new, adding value, accessibility, usability to our collections and making our space more friendly. I would like to thank Crystal Meyer and Pat Newton for their efforts in collaborating with me. I'd like to thank the community for responding, and Harvard and the Museum of Comparative Zoology for sending me here. Thank you all so much, and I hope to hear from you soon. If any of you would like to contact me and continue the conversation, please feel free to email me. I would love to hear from you. Thank you all, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the convention.
I know that Samuel's not here, but Pat Wooden's here. If there are any, we have time for one question, I think, if anybody has a question about this or comment.
Maybe. Yes.
Elaborate on batteries, especially given the challenges that you had been encountering, different localities and the changing nature of political boundaries.
So the question was, could you elaborate on choosing political boundaries and how you would establish that when historically there's been issues with that? And I think a lot of that is mitigated by there's very few countries that are on that boundary. So Mexico is one of them. Also, whether you split off, how you split Australasia. Our current thought is that if it's on the main continent of Asia, it should be in one. And then if you wanted to separate Australia and all of the islands, just because if you have further collections in that, you would possibly want to have another color for the same reason that people want Madagascar to have another color if they have strong holdings in that.
they're very biogeographically distinct and would need further separation anyway. Obviously, it's up for discussion. This was our first set of surveys. So anyone who has comments, things that they would like to add, we're super happy to talk to you, and the more responses we have, the better. All right, thank you.
All right. Next, we'll stir the pot a little bit about my pinning block is better than yours, and here's how.
Hi, I'm Ashley.
Hi, I'm Stephen.
I really want to tell you about my pinning block. It's better than yours. So cheese, so cheese.
Yes.
For anyone working with insect collections, pinning blocks are an essential tool. They allow insect specimens and their labels to be mounted at uniform heights, maintaining consistency.
Most blocks have position holes that are only visible from one side. They have small, difficult to find pinholes on the top surface, and the hard material can easily blunt the pin during insertion. 3D printing plastic allows more design freedom. We can put material wherever we want it and create shapes that are difficult to make using other materials. We designed our block to have 5 standard heights that are visible from both sides. This makes it suitable for left and right-handed use.
The grooves on top act as guidelines, helping you easily locate the right height, even when holes are obscured by big labels.
But don't take our word for it. Here's what some of our users have said. David said that it's changed the way he does pinning. It's much easier to use than his metal block. He says it's great for pinning capsules because the grooves hold the capsules in place. Donald said the windows at the side make it easier to see if you're properly through the specimen. The grooves make it much easier to find the holes.
Why not try it for yourself and download yours for free at colts3d.com. And of course, a very big thank you to all the National Museum Scotland staff and volunteers who have helped design this block. Happy pinning, everyone.
Okay, and for our final talk, Amanda Peh with a nuisance in the lab and field.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for staying till the end. My name is Amanda Peh, and I'm a entomology undergrad student in my final year at Cornell University. Today, I'll be talking about slide mounting and imaging methods I've been doing to prepare my Culicoides ceratophogonid specimens for deposition in the CUIC. For a bit of context, I've been doing a survey of Culicoides biting midges in New York State for the past few months. Culicoides is a small genus of fly. You might know them as biting midges or no-see-ums. They're blood-feeding flies, and so they're a nuisance to humans because they have really painful bites. But they also transmit several diseases, mostly of veterinary importance. But there's also one virus that can be transmitted to humans, which is Oropouche virus. This virus is known to be transmitted primarily by Culicoides pariensis, but other vectors are still unknown. Common symptoms are flu-like symptoms, but in severe cases, people may experience hemorrhages or encephalitis. The disease is endemic in the Amazon basin, but in the past 2 years, there have been emergences into new areas and also outbreaks in the endemic regions. As I said earlier, there are limited studies in vector competence for Oropouche virus and other species, but we know that they're primarily transmitted by Culicoides pariensis. So the genus is severely understudied because of their small size, and identification keys are not comprehensive in the region, and typically you need to dissect them and observe them under a microscope, which requires skills and equipment. The last study in New York State was in 1965, which is a really long time ago. There have been more recent updates in 1974 and 1984, but those were only county-wide. So my goals were to update the checklist of the species present in New York State to determine if Culicoides pariensis is present in the state, and to provide surveillance sites and programs with a more approachable species guide so they can look out for important vector species, and of course to deposit new specimens into the CUIC. So what I've done is collect specimens. I did collections around my area in Tompkins County using a CDC light trap with some modifications. And I also collaborated with other counties in New York State. Afterwards, I prepared voucher specimens on slides and dissected them. And then before depositing them into the CUIC, I would photograph them, and I hope to DNA sequence some of them. So I'll talk a bit about mounting some of my voucher specimens. In this vial, I'm not mounting all of them, so I'm only doing a select. Slide mounting in Canada balsam is pretty general. If other people know or have experience in mounting it with other organisms. First step is to macerate and just like dissolve non-chitinous tissues and decolorize the sclerotin in the chitin with KOH on heat. The second step is to neutralize this reaction so it doesn't become over cleared. Next is to replace the water with alcohol by just putting in isopropanol for a while. And finally, to put it in clove oil to dissect before mounting it on Canada balsam. So you have to put it through several solutions because solvents are not miscible in each other. As you can see here, acetic acid, they're just like bubbles in clove oil, and isopropanol also has bubbles in Canada balsam. So putting them in clove oil serves as a halfway point between the different solutions. This protocol is time consuming, and doing stuff in KOH is a bit finicky because you have to watch it, and it's like to the minute, to the seconds. You might easily overclear things or not clear it enough. An alternative slide mounting workflow is to do a DNA extraction protocol. So using proteinase K to macerate the tissues, and then you centrifuge it, remove the supernatant, which is where your DNA is going to be, and you can proceed with your DNA sequencing with that. And then you dissolve the pellet, which contains the body, in ethanol. And then after that, you can proceed with replacing the ethanol with clove oil, and then slide mounting them on Canada balsam. Here you can see for KOH, it's not very uniform because like heating the KOH is just very finicky. But using proteinase K, you get a clear specimen that's like really nice across all your specimens. Some of the tools that I found really helpful was using cat whiskers, courtesy of Pixel and Cricket, which are Jack's cats. So I put them on the end of some of my forceps, and this really helps manipulate the really small specimen without damaging them, moving them through solutions. I use fine tip forceps to dissect them and like tear up the wings and everything. And finally, to move things from clove oil to Canada balsam, I looped a small minute pin stuck onto a wooden stick. because the clove oil, the surface tension would just create like a bubble, and the piece that you want that's a head on there, just it doesn't get destroyed, and you can just dip it into the Canada balsam and it'll be nice. After I have my slides done, I'm doing some imaging, so we have some data for the specimens before uploading them. So using the CUIC's nice camera setup, I have a 10 times objective lens attached to a 200 millimeter camera lens, and I just do a photostack image for each of the body parts. After that, I do the imaging on Serene Stacker, which you guys have heard about. And then I do some editing to remove debris that's in Canada balsam and make it look nicer on Lightroom. This is my almost final product. I still need to do labels and have, scale bars. But this is a nice complete image. So I have my wings here, and then the other body parts, the head, thorax, and abdomen. And those are important to be dissected because they need to be oriented in different ways to view the characters that are important for identification. Here you can see very clearly a gap between the eyes, and then thorax, there wasn't anything for the species, but for the wing spots are important in identification, and the spermathecae in the abdomen. And this project was not possible without funding from the CDC to the NEVVD, and my my field partners in 7 different counties, and also my advisor, Laura Harrington, and my lab members, Jack at the back of the room, and his cats, and Philip Schultz from USDA, who's helped me with slide mounting. Thank you.
Small and soft, but when they come out of that protein, it's just so easily formed. Do you have any problems with that?
So the question was, someone has worked with phorid flies, and after macerating the protein, they're really fragile, and if I had problems with that. I've torn a bunch of specimens and lost a bunch of things too. Having the cat whiskers to manipulate them and just scoop them up with that has helped me a lot. And I don't think things have torn from that as much. And just trying not to actually touch the specimen has helped me. Yeah.
I've been looking at eyelash bolts for really finding things with pattern, but definitely the cat whiskers see.
Okay, thank you.